Now we're going to teach you how to use your Ductline editing options. There are three basic options when you go to edit full duct lines in Practicad. To access them, we're going to go into the library icon on your Practicad ribbon or Express toolbar. And then we're going to come over to the Ductwork options. To do that, we're going to click on the word Ductwork. We're going to come down to Ductline editing, and we're going to look at the three main options. Change duct to transition, keep duct size at turn, and keep duct size at transition. Specification by geometry is in other tutorials. The first duct line editing option is change duct to transition. For this tutorial, we're going to keep it checked. What change duct to transition does is it makes it so that if we make a size change in the middle of the duct line, Practicad will compensate for that change by putting a transition at the fitting before or after the change. This will of course be dependent upon the direction you are editing. Currently we're going to click on this fitting in the middle of 3. You can see by the arrow it is going to edit duct line forward in this direction if we make a change. We're going to double click on the fitting and look at the property width in. If we go to change the width in from 36 to 44, you can see the changes that Practicad has made. First, it has made a change up to the transition going forward down the duct line. So in other words, this fitting and this fitting, both properties are currently 44. However, you can see what it's done here is because we were editing forwards and the size change should be forward, Practicad does not want to edit the duct line backwards when change duct to transition is checked. What it does is it replaces the fitting that was rectangular duct, and now you can see that it is a transition. Name of the fitting is transition. So change duct to transition, when checked, will put a transition before or after the fitting we change. For example, if we actually hit Control Z to undo and then switch the direction we make the change, notice if we click here, now the arrow is pointing duct line backwards. If we now go and change the width in to 44 and hit enter, you can see that Practicad is compensated by putting a transition here. So the direction makes a difference as to which side the transition is placed. If we go to undo that and uncheck our change duct to transition in our library icon, here we can see what Practicad would do when the option is not selected. We're going to uncheck change duct to transition. We're going to hit the save key and we're going to exit out. Now what we're going to do is once again, we're going to say let's hold the fitting we're going to edit by the in. And we're once again going to click on this fitting here. And then I'm going to right click and go down to AutoCAD properties. Here once again, we're going to change the width in to 44 and then hit enter. Notice what it does. It makes the entire duct line change. What it does is it's actually going to carry the change forward and backwards, up and down the duct line, up into our next fitting. It could be a transition, an elbow, a T, but it's going to go up the line and down the line to our next fitting. So if we'd like a transition to be placed automatically at the size change behind us, change duct to transition should be checked. If we want the whole duct line to change, we can uncheck it. If we are going to use the change duct to transition option, we must be able to make sure that Practicad selects the transition that we want to use to fill in that gap automatically. For example, if we currently have our setting checked back to change duct to transition, we click on this fitting and change the width back to 30, you can see here that it's editing the duct line, and Practicad, by clicking on the transition that it's been added, you can see that it's using the name transition. That is the specific transition it's using. However, let's Control Z to undo what we've done, and let's change our settings so that it uses the finish length transition or maybe a custom transition instead. In order to select the transition you want Practicad to use during the edit, we must go into our Auto Duct button on the Practicad ribbon. On the left-hand side, notice that we have the routing button checked. Here we have it under single wall, and we've then got rectangular, round, and oval choices. This happens to be a single rectangular transition change, so we're going to check single wall and rectangular, but obviously we can choose between the three. Whenever we go to make an edit to the software, PractiCAD's options or the fittings it selects are coming from this auto duct section. Currently, notice that we have a place called sizing, and you can see that the fitting that is currently selected is the transition. This is the fitting that's currently selected when a size change needs to be made. Therefore, PractiCAD went back into this section and chose this fitting. If we wanted our change duct to transition option to use a finished length transition, we can switch it right here. If we switch it in auto duct once and then press OK, now we can have the settings set that when we go to adjust this fitting again, it will use the finish length transition. So we're going to double click on this fitting. We're going to move that width in back to 30 and hit enter. Notice when we do that, we're going to now double click on the fitting PractiCAD has selected. We go down to the name and you can see that it has chosen the finished length transition. So we can adjust the specific fitting that PractiCAD will use during this option. That'll conclude the tutorials on change duct to transition. How to use the keep duct size at turn option in PractiCAD. PractiCAD gives us the ability to choose whether or not an edit will carry up to an elbow or through an elbow. For example, let's double click on this transition right here. And then what we're going to do is change the width out to 30 and then hit enter. Notice when we do that, the PractiCAD has taken the edit, moved it up the duct line forward so that these two pieces are 30 by 18, but right here at the elbow it stopped and it did not adjust the elbows out. You can see that the width out of this elbow is still 26 by 18. However, if you would like the ability for the edit to go through the elbow and carry down the duct line up until the next fitting, we can choose to do so in our ductwork options. We're going to choose this option by going into the library icon on the PractiCAD ribbon or Express toolbar. Then we're going to go over to the ductwork options section by clicking on ductwork. Here you can see that under duct line editing we have an option that says keep duct size at turn. Currently it's unchecked, which is why the change only went up to the elbow and didn't carry through the elbow. Now we're going to check it, hit the save icon, and then we're going to exit out of the library. Now what we're going to do is go back to the transition. We're going to double click and we're now going to take the width out and make it 34 and hit enter. Notice that this time PractiCAD has carried the change all the way down the duct line through the elbow to the end of the duct line or up until the next fitting. So we have 34 by 18 on both sides. It carries the change all the way through the duct line. Now keep duct size at turn also has another feature. It's got a dual function inside PractiCAD. To demonstrate what we're going to do is we're going to grab a piece of pipe in the system and we're going to set it at 12 inches in diameter. And then we're going to place it on the drawing. If we are working on continue and we're going to grab an elbow, a 3-gourd elbow, and we're going to hit C spacebar for continue. You can see that when we do that, PractiCAD has resized the connector out or the diameter out of this fitting to match the diameter in of the fitting. However, if we uncheck that option in library, we will not get PractiCAD to resize the out to match the in. For example, we're going to uncheck keep duct size at turn. We're going to hit the save key and then we're going to exit out. Once again, we're going to grab a 5-gourd elbow and notice that when we go to grab the 5-gourd elbow, it only resizes the diameter of the in portion of the elbow and not the out. So keep duct size at turn will have two functions. One, it will always resize the out parameters to match the in parameters so you don't have to change them on input. And it will also allow it so that if you make an edit up or down the duct line, that edit will carry through the elbow instead of up to the elbow. How to use your change duct size at transition option. Practicad gives you the ability to make sure an edit will either carry up to a transition and stop, or carry through the transition to the fittings afterwards. For example, if we double click on this fitting in the beginning of the duct line and take a look at the arrow, which is currently pointed to the right, indicating that we're going to edit in that direction, you can see here that the width in is 36. Notice that the fitting after the transition has width in as 28. We're now going to take the width in here and we're going to change it to 42 and hit enter. Notice that Practicad only changes duct line forward all the way up to the transition. However, if we would like as a preference for that edit to carry through the transition, we must change our options in the Ductwork Options button. To access that, we have to go into Library icon inside our Practicad ribbon or Express toolbar. On the left-hand side, we're going to see the Ductwork options. We must click on the word Ductwork and the options will open. Here you can see we have Keep Duct Size at Transition. It's currently unchecked. Once again, that means that if we make a change, the change will carry up to the transition but not through it. For this tutorial, we're now going to click and check this option, Keep Duct Size at Transition. We're going to hit the Save key and then exit out of My Library. Now what we're going to do is double click on the fitting in the beginning of the duct line and we're going to make the change again. This time we're going to take the width in and make it 36 and we're going to hit enter. Notice when we do that Practicad has not only made the change up to the transition, but it's carried through the transition so the fittings afterwards are also 36. So this option will allow you to carry changes up to transition or through the transition, whichever you prefer. Now this function serves a dual purpose in Practicad. It also takes part in a role whenever you're going to input a new fitting on continue. For example, currently we have a piece of duct that is 24 by 18. We're going to go to the fitting bin and we're going to grab a finish length transition. And notice that I happen to be on continue and that it snapped the transition to the piece of rectangular duct and not only resized the parameters for width in and depth in to match the duct it was snapped to, but it took the width out and depth out parameters and made sure they match as well. So what it does is it makes sure that the width out and depth out parameters match the width in and depth in whenever you're on continue. If you remove this option, Practicad will only change the width in and depth in to match whatever you're snapping to. To demonstrate that, we're going to go into the library icon, Ductwork Options, and then we're going to go down to the Keep Duct Size at Transition, and we're going to uncheck it. We're going to hit the Save key and exit out once again. And now what we're going to do is grab the same transition out of our fitting bin. And now we're on continue. You can see that it has changed the width in and depth in to match what we're attaching to, but it has not adjusted the width out and depth out. So it serves two functions: making sure the width out and depth out match width in and depth in on continue, and making sure that the change will carry up or through the nearest transition. That'll conclude the tutorial on change duct to transition.